Roar!
Ew.
Hello and welcome to Midnight Readings. Today we'll be reading Chapter 4 of Carry Me Home, Starlight Glimmer. Written by Propmaster. Hope you all enjoy! Spike lay on the grass, staring up at the blue sky. A purple kite flew overhead, looping with the breeze, dipping and diving, and catching thermal currents. It was a perfect day for this, by all accounts, and no pony knew that better than Starlight Glimmer. Starlight was with Spike, leaning back against his side. The cool breeze tousled her mane and coat, and she smiled a sincere smile as she watched her kite float. Such a good day for it. We're very lucky. It's atypical for days like today to have such perfect conditions in this particular area of Ponyville.
Yeah, we could move somewhere else if you would want better conditions,
Spike said, his eyes following the kite's string down to the little unicorn, anchoring it. No, it's fine. I wouldn't want to go too far. They gave us special permission to be here after all. I don't want to push my luck. Starlight cast Spike a soft smile, and Spike frowned. Starlight reached out with one hoof and gave him a gentle pat on the side. This is good, Spike. I promise.
Okay. It's up to you,
Spike said, tearing his gaze away from her to the kite. Yep, all good. Thanks for checking, though. I really appreciate it, Starlight said, her gentle laugh shifting briefly into a cough. Spike's eyes shot back down to Starlight, and he frowned in worry. But she waved a hoof, wiping at her muzzle with one fetlock. I'm fine.
Do you need some water?
Spike asked. That sounds nice. Do you have any? Starlight said, not looking away from her kite as she spoke. Spike smirked.
You're looking at the most organized dragon in Equestria. My horde is arranged alphabetically, from agate to zirconium. Of course I have some water.
He reached down to a pack he'd set within reach of the grass and pulled out a decanter of water, setting it down beside Starlight.
Ice cold, thanks to a little enchantment from Twilight.
Starlight giggled. Of course. She'd want to make sure everything was perfect.
Yeah, of course. You might not be her oldest friend, Starlight, but she cares. If the delegation from Griffinstone hadn't shown up unannounced today, you know she'd be here. But those griffins never take no for an answer,
Spike said, sighing as he uncapped the decanter. Yeah, I know. It's not a big deal. I know she'll come see me tonight, Starlight said, a wistful tone entering her voice, and she sighed. But she'll have missed this.
Yeah,
Spike said, unable to really say anything else. His gaze wandered from the kite, following the taut string to the unicorn sitting beside him comfortably, as she reached out one shaky hoof and lifted up the decanter. The container trembled in weakened arms, and Starlight grimaced slightly as some cold water spilled down the corner of her lip. She drank carefully, sparingly, little sips at a time, the container resting against her chin as she tilted her head back and her eyes closed. Spike watched the droplets of water flow down her weakened neck, passing through patches of bare skin where her coat had become thin, and rolled down her chest. Her ribs stood out, a sharp contrast of hardness against the weakened features of the little mare. Starlight's eyes opened, catching Spike looking, and she set down the decanter with care. Spike reached out one clawed hand and gently took it from her and recapped the container. Starlight glanced down at herself, the emaciation obvious, as she leaned against her friend and she shook her head. Pretty bad, huh?
No,
Spike said cautiously, and Starlight glared up at him. He shook his head, correcting himself.
I mean, yeah, it's hard seeing you like this, but the treatments are almost over, right? You're this way because your body is getting better, not worse. So it's good, even if it's bad looking. It means that things are doing what they're supposed to do.
Starlight smirked, reaching up with one hoof and bopping Spike on the snout. Yeah, that's right. The treatments are almost over. And then after that, just one more procedure and hopefully I'll have bucked this thing.
Yeah, just one more procedure, Spike swallowed. Modern medicine is pretty cool, isn't it? We can do things with magic and technology that we couldn't possibly think of 40 years ago.
Starlight nodded. It really is. It's so interesting. I mean, who would think to take my own cells and genetically alter them with magic to fight the things inside me that normally wouldn't fight? It's incredible. We've come so far.
Spike smiled at Starlight. It's cool.
Very cool,
Starlight said, with an air of finality. I mean, it's got really good chance of making sure it doesn't come back, right? Spike said, looking up at the kite and failing to pick up on Starlight's tone. Starlight hummed, before agreeing.
Yeah, if it works, it's got a very high success rate. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't really matter, does it?
Spike glanced down at Starlight, frowning slightly. I guess.
One way or another, this'll be all over pretty soon. And that's the most relieving thing of all,
Starlight said softly. Spike swallowed hard. Yeah. Starlight sighed, leaning further into Spike, her hoof tugging the kite, tethered gently, making the wings flex, and causing the kite to loop and dip in the air, performing little acrobatic pirouettes. Spike's eyes were on Starlight now, and he watched her. If she noticed his stare, she didn't respond. He looked up at the kite and back down to his friend. So, Starlight smiled.
50-50.
Spike looked up at the kite, words failing him. Starlight glanced up at him.
I'm really happy you're here, Spike. You've always been a good friend to me, and you were always so generous, sharing your home and your friends and Twilight with me. You never got jealous, and you're always kind. Not every pony was as kind as you were to me, but you really made efforts when I first came to Ponyville.
Spike blushed, one claw digging into the grass in an embarrassment circle. Oh, well, Starlight continued.
And I know it's a lot to take in, and I know you've all these questions, but I'm tired of having to answer questions that break my loved one's heart. Or be strong, or be the one that offers up a hug when they can't handle the news. I can't handle that. And so I've been looking forward to spending time with you in Twilight, and flying kites for weeks. It really kept me going.
She exhaled slowly, her ears dripping a bit.
So, can we just go back to flying kites and not talking about things? I might not have a lot of kite flying left in me here, and so I want to make this count.
Spike was silent, taking in Starlight's words, and Starlight allowed him his contemplation as she focused on flying her kite. She sat forward a bit, gripping the line in two hooves, her horn glowing fitly, as she added a third point of manipulation to the line, and she began to maneuver the kite through the air, dipping down and rolling up, down and up, increasing the speed as she worked the line. Spike watched her, as her tongue stuck out a little bit, and one eye winced close as she concentrated. For a moment, the patchy coat and the thinning mane and the dull colours of her eyes fell away, and Spike saw Starlight. She clenched her teeth and tugged on the line, and the kite swooped dramatically towards the ground. A fast dive, and then a quick twist of the line, releasing slack. Not quite fast enough. The kite plopped onto the ground, and Starlight laughed a genuine laugh, leaning against Spike for support as she cackled at the failure, coughing in between each giggle. Spike laughed along, a deep bass sound that rumbled against Starlight and made her laugh harder. Starlight pressed herself against his side, breathing hard, exhausted. That would have been awesome if it had worked.
Yes, it would have,
Spike said, gently prodding her in the side with one claw.
I'd like to see you do better,
Starlight said, smiling at him. Spike got up off the ground, settling Starlight on the grass with one claw and his wings spread open.
I could. Rainbow Dash taught me to fly, after all.
They don't call her Rainbow Crash for nothing, Spike,
Starlight said, her eyes challenging as much as her tone. Spike broke into a trot and launched himself across the field.
A few looping four-legged strides, getting him up to speed before he felt his wings catch air. He began to flap, powerful strokes, setting the grass whirling and Starlight's mane blowing back, and he was in the air. Spike smiled, wheeling up into the sky, catching a thermal updraft that brought him higher with relative ease, and he whirled around looking down at Starlight. Starlight was standing up, walking unsteadily to her kite. Spike watched her as she brought the kite into the air once more on sputtering bursts of magic, and soon he had a companion in the air. The purple kite fluttered near him, and Spike matched its position in the air, grinning down at Starlight. Starlight steadied herself, sitting down and grabbing the line. She shouted something that Spike couldn't hear, but he knew what she wanted. As Starlight pulled on the kite, maneuvering it into a dive, Spike followed it down, allowing gravity to tug on him. He whooped and could hear Starlight cheer as well. The kite plummeted, Spike right behind, and together Spike and Starlight both maneuvered at the last moment. The kite whipped upwards, nearly hitting Spike on the nose, and Spike flapped, pulling up as well, allowing one back leg to dangle a bit and brush the grass as he flew level to the earth before swooping upwards on his momentum. He back-winged, killing his forward speed, and landed on his back legs with a gentle bounce near Starlight. Starlight smiled at him, delighted. "That was cool." "Very cool," Spike said, beaming down at her. Starlight reeled in her kite, smirking, as she began to disassemble it, and put the pieces into a saddlebag. "So, I had an idea." "Yes?" "You, ever had passengers?" Starlight looked up at Spike hopefully. Spike stared down at her for a moment, taking her in. "You think you could hold on?" Starlight giggled. "I'm not gonna ride on top of you, silly dragon. Do you think you could carry me?" "Yes," Spike said, relief evident in his smile. "So?" Starlight grinned, stepping closer to Spike. Spike picked her up, tossing her saddlebag into his own, and he inhaled. With a flash of green, he hit the bag, sending it spiraling away in the wind. Starlight giggled. "Oh man, I'm so glad you figured out how to control your sending flame. So easy to— Whoa!" Before she could finish, Spike shifted her into the crook of his arm and took a running leap, his wings beating hard as he flew into the sky. Starlight clung to him, her eyes wide despite the firm grasp he had on her, one hand reaching up and securing her along her back, as the other cradled beneath her. She relaxed after a few long moments, peering down as the world spiraled away, Spike flying up and out over the field. She gasped as they flew through a low cloud, coughing slightly at the increased moisture in the air, and then laughing as they popped out the top. Spike held her close, angling his wings as they flew, taking her on a slow and circulous route over Ponyville. Starlight pressed against him, sighing happily as she stared out at the town. After several long minutes, she spoke up. "Thank you." "Of course," Spike said. They flew over the town, flying around the top of the Friendship Castle once, and then Spike turned towards the edge of town, flying in for a gentle landing before the doors of Ponyville Hospital. Starlight stepped down onto the earth with shaky legs, and Spike steadied her with one hand, letting her get her balance. She beamed up at him and waved a hoof. "Come here." Spike bent down, and Starlight reached up and wrapped her hooves around his face, hugging him tightly, before she planted a soft kiss on his nose. "Today was amazing." Spike blushed, staring at her. "Yeah?" "Yeah. You're the best, Spike. Thanks for just letting me be normal for a little while." Spike nodded, swallowing. "I mean, what are friends for?" Starlight nuzzled him gently before releasing him from the hug. "I need a nap after all that excitement. I'm going to head inside. I'll leave the window to my room open if you want to peek in, okay?" Spike grinned. "Cool. Have a nice evening, Starlight." Starlight turned, facing the double doors of the hospital front entrance. "I will. You too, Spike." Spike watched as the mare carefully walked into the hospital. She disappeared inside, the doors shutting, and Spike stood in place for a long moment before he turned and launched himself back into the sky, heading for home. Of all the characters! That was Carry Me Home, Starlight's chapter. I think a lot of you know why I can relate to this. Really hard. When you're feeling sick, sometimes the greatest gift is for normalcy, even if for just a short time. I hope you all enjoyed. Keep watching that moon. And a howling thank you to my Patreons.